Imagine, for a moment, an old beggar who has spent over 30 years sitting in the same spot beside a road. One day, a stranger approaches. The beggar lifts his cap, asking for a coin, as he has done 1,000 times before. The stranger says he has nothing to give, and pointing to the box the beggar is sitting on, asks, "What is that you're sitting on?" The beggar shrugs. "Nothing. Just an old box. I've sat on it for as long as I can remember." The stranger presses. "Have you ever looked inside?" With some effort, the beggar opens the box and finds it packed with gold. This is more than a parable. It's a direct invitation to look beneath your own layers of fatigue. Is it possible you, too, have been begging the outside world for scraps while ignoring the fortune you've been carrying all along? The tragedy is not that the gold is missing, but that it remains unopened there because we learn to quietly doubt our own depth. You're about to see the hidden mechanism that has kept you in spiritual lack, and the first step to finally opening the box you've been afraid to touch. What is it that stops us feeling the peace Eckhart Tolle speaks about? The answer is simpler than it sounds. We are completely fused with the mind. We assume we are that constant stream of commentary that never pauses for even a second. In our culture, this mental activity is treated as something valuable, even as a mark of intelligence, and we rarely notice the price we pay. We live cut off from our essence because the noise outside, and above all the noise inside, acts like a wall between us and stillness. And that stillness is not a dull emptiness, it is a state of fullness. When the mind takes command, it manufactures a false me, an identity stitched together from scraps of memory, fear, and labels. Descartes, with his famous line, "I think, therefore I am," put into words the great mistake of the modern age, the belief that we are what we think. Yet what we truly are sits far beyond any idea. Have you ever noticed, as you try to fall asleep, that something in you is watching your thoughts go by? Most of us live in a state of separation, trapped in a world that feels chaotic because the mind itself is fragmented. Once we identify with thought, we build a dense screen of judgments that fogs everything we see. That screen separates us from other people and from nature, feeding the lie that we are isolated islands in the universe. Deep down, beneath the body and the name, life is one, but we've stopped feeling that unity as a living fact. Belief might offer a little comfort, but only direct experience can liberate you. To reach that, we have to admit that excessive thinking has become an illness of our time. Thought that never rests, that never learns when to be quiet, becomes destructive. The mind is an extraordinary tool, but only when you are the one using it. The problem isn't simply that we use it badly. The problem is that it uses us. We live under the orders of an instrument that was meant to serve. You might tell yourself your mind has helped you achieve goals or solve complex problems, and that may be true. But solving a problem is not the same as being at peace. The mind loves to chew on problems the way a dog chews a bone, simply out of habit, simply because it doesn't know how to let go. So here is the key question. Can you stop thinking right now if you decide to? Do you truly have your hand on the off switch, or does the machine keep running on its own? Most of us are possessed by thinking without realizing it. And recognizing that you are not the narrator in your head is the first step out of the cell. But the moment you try to release control, you feel resistance, often right there in the body. Real freedom doesn't arrive when you get promoted or buy a house, but when something subtle happens inside you. You realize you're not the voice that never stops talking in your head. Tolle insists we are not the entity that seems to think for us. Seeing this opens the door to a new level of awareness. Watching the thinker, your inner commentator, is the first step of waking up. The moment you become the witness of what moves through your mind, something higher in you switches on. You discover an ocean of intelligence far larger than any chain of reasoning. Thought is only a spark inside the vastness of consciousness. And the strangest part is that the things that truly matter, beauty, love, peace, do not come from thinking harder, but from the silence left when the mind pauses. But what does it actually mean to watch the thinker? It is more ordinary than you expect. If someone said aloud that they hear voices in their head, we would probably think they need medical help. Yet all of us live with a running inner murmur that rarely stops. It is made of judgments, critiques of what you did yesterday, and fears about what might happen tomorrow. That voice speaks on its own. Even when you say nothing, it keeps replaying old scenes or rehearsing future problems that may never occur. We call that habit of projecting negative films worry. And the voice is not neutral. It reads the world through your wounds and whatever you learned as a child. So it often turns into a brutal judge that drains you and makes you suffer. To break the cycle, start by observing. Listen to what your mind says, but do it without fighting. Don't try to silence it by force, and don't shame yourself for what appears. Just be the witness. Notice the phrases you have repeated for years, like when you make a mistake and mutter, "I'm so stupid." When you observe without judgment, something almost magical happens. You notice you are the one who hears, not the one who speaks. A quiet presence appears that isn't a thought, but the direct experience of being alive. From there, ideas lose force because you stop feeding them with attention. That is how compulsive thinking begins to weaken. You may notice small gaps, seconds with no words, only stillness. Those moments feel like coming home. They are where your real self shines without interference. And that peace is the one thing nobody can take from you, because it doesn't depend on what happens outside. But keeping that steadiness isn't easy once emotion enters the room. When a surge of anger rises or grief tightens your throat, the mind tries to grab the wheel and stories return. It will tell you to justify, blame, defend, or escape. This is where practice matters. Stay with the feeling, name it, and keep watching. Next, we'll learn how to hold emotion without losing the witness steadily. If inner peace meant losing consciousness or becoming flat and lifeless, it would not be worth seeking. But Toller says the opposite happens. When you find that inner union, you enter a sharper, more vivid alertness than when you are trapped in thought. You do not drift off, you wake up. This state doesn't dull attention, it brightens it, and it lifts the vitality of the whole body. When you step into what some traditions call no mind, you touch a clean awareness, free of the weight of chewing problems all day. In that space, the experience of being is so immediate that everything else feels secondary. One doorway is watching the thinker, but you can also cut a gap in the mental stream by placing all your attention on now. Drop into the moment with force. That full attention disconnects you from noise and brings you into wordless presence. That is meditation in its simplest form. In daily life, any routine act can become practice. It is not what you do, but how you do it. Walking upstairs becomes a gate to the present when you feel each step, each shift of balance, each breath. When you wash your hands, notice the sound of water, the texture of soap, the temperature on skin. When you get into the car, pause for a second. Feel the air moving in and out. Sense the stillness around you. Stay there, present and alive. How do you know it works? There is a clear sign, the level of peace you feel inside. Peace doesn't come from mastering complicated theories. It comes from inhabiting the moment and releasing the idea that you are your mind. Each time you open even a small space of silence, the light of awareness grows stronger. There may come a moment when you actually smile at your thoughts, as if watching a small child misbehave. That smile is a mark of wisdom. You no longer take the mind's commentary so seriously because you know you are not it. This doesn't mean thinking is useless. The mind is a wonderful tool, but only when it is used deliberately. The problem is that, for most people, the mind runs by itself, generating repetitive ideas that lead nowhere. Compulsive thinking is a kind of addiction. What defines an addiction is loss of freedom. You can't choose to stop. We cling to thought because we assume that if thinking ends, we will end. We build an image of who we are from what society rewards. We call that image me. But it is only a ghost held up by mental noise. That is the ego, and the ego fears silence because it cannot live there. But you can, because your essence doesn't need thought in order to be. What would change if today you stopped defending that image? If you didn't rush to fix, explain, or justify, what would you feel? Could you let the mask drop for a minute? Could you meet the raw sensation underneath and stay? That is the doorway, not another thought, but a direct seeing right here, this moment. The ego isn't what we usually think. In this context, Tolle describes it as an illusory being, a mind-made identity sustained by the habit of believing we are what we think. It's a mental image that claims to say who you are, but it's only a shadow of your real being. For the ego, the present moment has no value. Its attention lives almost always in the past or the future, creating a dysfunctional way of existing. The ego needs to keep yesterday alive, because that is where it finds a sense of identity. Think about it. Without your personal story, your memories, your old wounds, who would you be to the world? So the ego clings to what has happened, and at the same time, projects its hope into the future. It is always chasing the achievement or the peace it cannot find right now. It promises that one day, when you finally have the money, the partner, the trip, you'll be happy. But it's a trap. Even when it seems present, it filters the moment through old lenses or treats it as a stepping stone to somewhere else. The truth is that now is the only doorway to freedom. There isn't another. Every time you return to now, the storyline weakens, and you touch a simpler fact. Awareness is here before any thought arrives, but you can't step through it while you keep letting the mind hold the wheel. You may feel afraid and wonder whether you'll lose your ability to analyze or reason. This isn't about becoming dull or deleting intelligence. It's about putting the mind in its proper place. Thinking is a precious gift, but it must serve awareness. The mind should not be the master of the house, but a loyal ally, a faithful collaborator. Tolle is clear that enlightenment is not a state beneath thought, but a rise above it. When you wake up, the mind is still there, yet it no longer dominates you. It becomes a sharper, more useful tool. A quiet inner space appears that, far from blocking thought, brings more clarity. In fact, real creative thinking is born from the balance between mind and that space of no mind, of silence. Genuine creation, whether in art or in science, comes from that silent depth. Even great minds like Einstein admitted that logical thought played only a small role at the exact moment of a major discovery. The key is not to think more, but to know when to stop. The mind also includes emotion, the bridge between what you think and what the body feels. An emotion is the body's physical reaction to a thought. If you hold a hostile idea, the body may surge with anger. If you imagine a threat, the body tightens with fear. Seeing this mechanism gives you new power, the ability to observe without reacting automatically. From presence, emotions become simple messengers, and the mind finally becomes an instrument of your true self. You think, plan, and handle problems, but you do it from steadiness, not compulsion. The difference is subtle, yet it changes everything. Eckhart Tolle says that for years he lived as a hostage to his own mind. He walked around with an anxiety that gave him no rest, chewing the same circular thoughts that show up when you're stressed about debts or an office argument. At times, the sadness grew so heavy, he began to wonder what any of it was for. On the outside, his life looked ordinary, but inside he carried a storm that slowly burned him down. You probably know the feeling, the mental noise that steals your sleep, or the sudden dread that hits while you're on the bus or washing the dishes. One night, when he was 29, Tolle woke with a fear stronger than anything he had known. His room and his own existence felt meaningless, something he could no longer endure. In that desperation, a thought appeared. I can't live with myself anymore. Then something astonishing happened. He stepped back and asked a simple question. If I can't live with myself, who is the I and who is the myself I can't stand being with? That crack exposed the lie. There weren't two people inside him. There was only awareness, which for years had mistaken itself for thoughts and labels. In that moment, the need to protect the image of me began to fall away. A strange calm arrived. The mind that had been like midday city traffic dropped into complete silence. Something deeper took the lead. A pure awareness that didn't need words in order to exist. What followed was a quiet emptiness that didn't frighten him. It held him. He let go completely. When morning came, the world looked different. He heard a bird and felt as though he were hearing for the first time. The light at the window seemed like pure love. Everything felt new. No judgment, only the fact of being here, only being. When was the last time you looked at a tree or even a mug of coffee without the mind rushing in to comment or compare? For months, Tolle says he lived in an unexplainable joy, walking the streets with the wonder of a small child. Beyond emotions that rise and fall, he sensed a peace that nothing could break. He had returned to an inner home that had always been there, waiting to be noticed. Over time, people approached him because they sensed something different. He told them that the same peace was already theirs, but they couldn't feel it because the noise of their worries was too loud. That is how the power of now was born, not as a plan, but as a way of describing what belongs to all of us. Life without the pressure of the clock. Tolle didn't choose to be a teacher. Life showed him that when the mental story loosens, your true face appears. Awakening isn't a superhuman achievement. It's a simple reunion with what you are, what remains when you stop clinging to job titles and past mistakes. His old life didn't instantly become perfect, but the suffering of resisting it fell away. The thoughts still came, yet they passed through space rather than gripping him. That is the difference between a mind you inhabit and a mind that inhabits you in the end. But there's a layer few people mention: what the body holds when the mind refuses to look. Emotions aren't just moods that come and go. They are surges of energy that land in the body. Tolle explains that whenever we feel something strongly, chemical changes are set off inside us. It's as if the body speaks its own language, telling us what is happening where words can't reach. Often, we don't notice what we're thinking, especially when the thoughts are automatic and repeat like an old song. But if we pay attention to what we feel, we can uncover the hidden thoughts underneath. Emotions act as messengers. They reveal what the mind has been whispering in the background. The more you cling to judgments and personal preferences, the stronger the reactions your body will produce. When we disconnect from feeling, the body carries the whole load. What we refuse to process inside starts to show up outside, sometimes as back pain, a physical symptom, or even situations that look like bad luck. In truth, nothing is accidental. Unrecognized emotional energy can draw in problems that mirror our inner state. Someone carrying a lot of unacknowledged anger often meets conflict in the street or at work and can't understand why. If you struggle to connect with emotion, start by sensing the body from within. Bring attention to the tingling in your hands or the beat of your heart. In that quiet space, the door opens to what you actually feel, beyond the mind's explanations. Sometimes there's a fight between what you think and what you feel. Your mind may say you're fine, yet your stomach is tight. In moments like that, the body usually tells the truth about your inner condition. The body doesn't know how to lie. It reflects what's in the unconscious with blunt honesty. That's why watching an emotion can be as valuable as watching a thought. The difference is that emotion is lived physically, and when you can stay present with it without being dragged away, something shifts. You stop being the emotion and become the space in which the emotion happens. So what is happening inside you right now? Try not to answer with logic, just feel. If you notice nothing obvious, look deeper into the basic vibration of life moving through you. This is an entrance to essence. Sometimes the charge is so strong that the emotion tries to hijack you, to speak and decide through you. A vicious circle forms. An ugly thought triggers a heavy feeling, and that heaviness breeds more ugly thoughts. That is how suffering feeds itself. When you feel the wave rising, don't rush to explain it. Bring attention to the raw sensation, pressure, heat, tightness, movement. Let it be there without a story. The moment you stop resisting, the energy begins to change shape. It may soften, spread, or simply pass. Presence doesn't fight emotion. It gives it space to complete its message fully through. At root, the pain comes from one place, forgetting who we really are. That fear, that sense of abandonment, is healed by consciousness, by observing without judgment and remembering that behind any emotional storm, your being remains intact, quiet, and at peace. But is there something that weighs even more than a passing emotion? One of the mind's most stubborn functions is trying to erase or fight emotional suffering. We spend our lives battling what we feel, and that inner struggle is a big reason the head never goes quiet. All the effort to escape pain only hides it for a while. It doesn't free you from it. In fact, the more you run from what hurts, the more power it gains. The mind is part of the problem, not the solution. Tolle uses a sharp image. Imagine a police chief hunting an arsonist in desperation, not realizing the one lighting the fires is him. It's a total paradox. You can't be free from suffering while you still believe you are your mind. Only when you drop that assumption and let your real being emerge does the mind lose its throne and the light of awareness shine clearly. You may wonder what happens to positive emotions like love or joy. Do we have to leave them behind as well? The truth is, these qualities don't belong to ordinary emotional swings. True love, deep joy, and inner peace aren't emotions in the usual sense. They don't depend on good news, and they aren't ruled by time. They arise naturally when there is space, when the mental noise falls silent for a moment. Sometimes these flashes arrive without warning, in front of a breathtaking view, in the middle of intense effort, or even when danger is close. For a few seconds, the mind goes quiet, and something pure appears. But the mind returns quickly, reclaiming its place with labels and judgments. These states of being are deeper than any passing feeling. The word emotion comes from Latin and points to disturbance. Emotions are like choppy waves on the surface of a lake. Love and peace don't disturb. They harmonize the whole of you. They don't come and go with circumstances. They're always there, like blue sky behind the clouds. Most of the time we confuse pleasure with joy and attachment with love. Pleasure comes from outside and always ends. What delights you today can hurt you tomorrow. And what we call love is often need in disguise, an addictive bond that can turn into blame or hatred with frightening speed. Real love doesn't hurt and doesn't flip into its opposite. Real joy doesn't depend on your bank balance or your social life. They are reflections of your essence. Before full awakening, you may glimpse this, moments when the mind settles and something sacred shows itself. It can happen in a relationship, when a spark of pure authenticity appears, and then the mind rushes back to invent drama and story. You think you lost something precious, but you didn't. What you touched was real, and it's still there, covered by the fog of thought, like the sun that never stops shining. Even when you can't see it, it remains behind the noise. The Buddha taught that suffering is born from seeking in the future or in the external world what exists only in the now. Even the desire to awaken, if you push it into tomorrow, becomes another veil. Liberation isn't fighting desire, it's returning to the present. Being the observer of your mind is already awakening. Don't quote the Buddha, be the Buddha. Emotional suffering arises when we forget who we are. Every pleasure carries the seed of pain. There are two levels of suffering, what we create now and what we drag from the past. The path is to stop feeding present pain and let the past dissolve in the light of awareness. When old pain is truly triggered, the mind races to label it, to blame someone, to replay the story because it thinks that will protect you. But the story only keeps the pain alive. If you stay as the witness, you can feel the raw energy without turning it into identity. Then the suffering you carry from the past begins to unwind. You don't need to dig up every memory. You need to stop creating new pain now and let awareness do its quiet work. What was stored starts to soften. How much suffering have you carried because you thought you were your mind, when all along you were the one who watched? And that concludes our video. If you enjoyed the content as much as we did, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your feedback and suggestions for future videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications to stay up to date with all our updates. Thanks for being part of our community. See you in the next video.